Yo, the following is a conversation with Sergey Gorbunov, who is one of the co-founders over at Axelar Network, and Sergey has also been one of the founding members of Algorand. We talked a lot about interoperability, what it actually means for different parties involved in the crypto space, and also what interoperability actually does behind the scenes, right? Because there's a lot of kind of like variations of interoperability, how it appears. It's not a black and white thing. For example, you have wrapped assets on Ethereum, but then you also have IBC, for example, right? To really understand how it differentiates, what it means, what it does, and also how the future will look like, right? Because I think we're both ideologically aligned here that the future is multi-chain. And also in that context, full disclosure, I'm personally invested in Axelar in a strategic round. And I see that Axelar could become this sort of Google Translate of Cosmos that gives access to all these other ecosystems and becomes this ultimate interoperability hub within the Cosmos ecosystem, but also beyond that, right? So I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you extract some value out of it. I know I did. So please enjoy. Leave your thoughts about it in the comments, join their communities, and have fun with the interview. Yeah, really excited to be joined today by Sergey Gorbunov, who is co-founder over at Axelar. That's another big project that is right now in the works, and also part of the Cosmos ecosystem, built on the Cosmos SDK powered by Tendermint. Really had the privilege and honor to also meet you in Lisbon. So thanks for coming by, and thanks for being here today. We'll talk a lot about interoperability, which I think is one of the biggest things we need to resolve in the crypto space as a whole to gain real adoption. So thanks for being here. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's great to be here. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Looking forward to the talk.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we get into interoperability, Cosmos, also I would like to hear your thoughts about how you view the Cosmos Hub, for example. So all these kind of cool things. Would be cool to share a little bit about your background. You've been the founding member over at Algorand on a very high level and deeply involved in many other things in the crypto space. So yeah, maybe you can share a little bit about your journey in the crypto space so far, and also what you did before crypto.
Yeah, for sure. So my original background is distributed systems and cryptography. I studied formal cryptography at MIT for a number of years, building foundational protocols for the web, the cloud, distributed systems, and so on and so forth. And then got into the blockchain space by the end of my grad school. So I started to collaborate with Sergey Michaeli on some of the early works behind the Algorand protocol. I spent a bit of time as a faculty at the University of Waterloo as well, doing research in distributed systems cryptography, and helped to build the Algorand and launch it to the market with the team. So that was pretty excited. And afterwards, I saw many different blockchain systems being developed in parallel, right? And it was clear that interoperability is going to be a foundational problem that we're going to have to solve, and kind of decided to focus my time on that going forward.
Awesome, that's really cool. And I'm also personally a follower of Algorand since they launched, and really, I think it's also cool to be involved in different ecosystems, hear what they do, what they are doing, and then this and that, left and right, and instead of just focusing on one ecosystem and say, oh, everything else is a scam, only ours is the best one, and everything else is bullshit, right? I think we're seeing a lot of this tribalistic behaviors in crypto these days, and I'm much more like you just described. The future's multi-chain will all kind of route towards this. So at what point and how and when did you then stumble upon Cosmos? And why did you think it's a good idea to build Axelar on the Cosmos stack over, for example, something like Polkadot?
Yeah, so I was aware of some of the work that Cosmos folks were doing as well at Algorand, right? I knew Ethan, we've chatted a few times. I knew some of the other folks, and I think two things that as we're starting to think about interoperability. The way that we wanted to approach it would require us to kind of customize quite a lot of things, and we knew we have to kind of build various kind of consensus mechanisms, various finality gadgets, and so on and so forth. So first of all, we needed a platform that we can start with that would give us this flexibility to customize various levels of the consensus protocol and various levels of governance models. And so Cosmos SDK, I think, was by far the best available option when we were starting this. That was like a year and a half ago. So I played with the stack a little bit. I think Polkadot was kind of behind at that time, and so I didn't feel like we can work with it yet, and didn't really give us all the flexibility that we needed. And so the Cosmos SDK provided kind of all the tooling and everything we needed. But second of all, I think kind of Cosmos ecosystem was built on the premise of a multi-chain world, right? And interoperability is one of the kind of core themes in the Cosmos ecosystem. And I think a lot of the projects are very collaborative. They sort of help each other, right, along these lines. And kind of given what we wanted to see is like lots of different chains, lots of different ecosystems just connect and interact with each other, right, with their own utility behind themselves. That made a lot of sense for us to work with it. And the community has been great as well. I think the Cosmos community, Zach, a bunch of other folks just helping us all along the way. So I think we're really enjoying it.
Yeah, I feel the exact same. I mean, I came also from the outside, and I just stumbled upon Cosmos. I'm like, man, this sounds interesting. This sounds cool. But then what really trapped me and captured me in that ecosystem was the community, was people like Zach,
right.
Jack, even founding members, even Ethan, but also just basic random cosmonauts from the community, atom holders. They're like, hey, we all kind of like envision this multi-chain future where you have tens of thousands, eventually millions of blockchains that are all enabled to like seamlessly communicate to each other. And that's a philosophy and vision that resonates a lot with me. So in that context, how do you view, you just said already that there's a lot of builders, a lot of activity, a lot of like projects in the Cosmos ecosystem. How do you see the current stage of the Cosmos ecosystem? And especially, how do you view the role of the Cosmos Hub within that ecosystem?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the ecosystem is still young, right? Which is exciting. I think the Cosmos SDK has been around for a couple of years, and people have been building projects around them. But basic connectivity through IDC just went live earlier this year, right? And you're starting to see more activity from the Cosmos ecosystem. I think probably the next few years are going to be really exciting to see what really happens, as we will get to see applications, I think, come to life, right? And interoperate, interact with each other, interact with other ecosystems outside of Cosmos as well. So yeah, I'll say that it's still young. I think it's super excited. It's super exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the applications that will be built around it. So yeah, and I think in terms of Cosmos Hub, I think so far, it's been great, almost like a demonstrator of the power of the interoperability, right, and of the power of kind of Cosmos SDK. And that has been its position so far, I would say, within the Cosmos ecosystem. And from there, I think we'll see what happens to it, right? I think it may end up being as a kind of routing hub. I think that various folks are trying to add additional services around the Cosmos Hub. So I think it's still early to say what will, I think, eventually shape up out of it. But so far, it's been just an amazing, I guess, proof point for the technology that was built over the years.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of the core things that the Cosmos people have done is they really focus first on building those developer kits, focusing on building those tech stacks, and then say, okay, we'll figure out along the way how, for example, we can build a value accrual mechanism around the atom, right? That goes besides just securing the chain, which nowadays in crypto land for most people is pretty boring, right? Even though it is kind of like the biggest, like most important use case, but people are like, man, I can only make 10% staking rewards here. That's so boring. The inflation of 7% almost eats everything up. So people are kind of like very, very impatient in the industry. And I think that makes it really hard for builders, also like you, I guess, to say, hey, where's the sweet spot to, have the right economic incentives also for the community, but also at the same time make sure the system is robust and sustainable. And I think that's one thing the entire crypto space still is figuring out as we speak, right? Like you said, this is all brand new. So yeah, in that context, you also talked about this at Cosmoverse, or I think there's also some other presentations that you did, where you said, you know, you have these different eras in crypto. The first one just being kind of like the proof of concept for Bitcoin and for Ethereum, for these like kind of like big layer ones. And then you had the first version of connectivity between those chains. But now we're entering an era where we actually need and require to have full interoperability. So maybe it would be good to give everyone a brief overview of what interoperability in that context means and what kind of like different degrees there are, because it's kind of like really hard to understand. You know, for example, you have WBTC, right? That's already kind of like, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then you have bridges like Avalanche. They implement a lot of bridges, right? So maybe can you talk a little bit about different concepts of interoperability and where we currently stand?
Yeah, so I think, you know, interoperability by itself is a very overloaded term right now in the ecosystem, even though there is, you know, not that much of it exists yet, I would say, right? Besides kind of within the Cosmos or kind of a few other projects. So I think here's the way that I think about it if you take a step back, right? So, you know, we have all these different chains that are communicating and running some type of consensus protocol, right? So whenever you're talking about interoperability at the core, you're asking like, how can we connect them together to make information flow easier, asset transfer flow easier, but finally allow really users to interact with all of these ecosystems easier, right? Like right now, it's still a pain. You have to have a wallet on chain A. You see an application on chain B. You got to go through some, you know, external wallet or external mechanism to move your assets, and then only finally you can use it in the application. Take some, you know, security assumptions along the way. Pay 3 types of transaction fees and gas fees, right? And so it's kind of a nightmare. So whenever we're talking about interoperability, I think there is kind of at first there is just a protocol interoperability, right? So meaning that, you know, you have a chain A, you have a chain B. How do you just pass messages from one chain to another, right? And the message in this case could be really anything, right? So it could be an asset transfer message, it could be NFT transfer, right? It could be information retrieval from one chain to another, or it could be like a smart contract call that you want to differentiate to. But at the very core of it, you first have to define like what is this connected tissue right across these ecosystems. And, you know, IBC is a good example of connected tissue that works quite well, you know, within the Cosmos ecosystem, right, between kind of Tendermint chains right now that serve live. The protocol is kind of agnostic to what it is that you're trying to pass along. So that's the first thing. You have to define how you're going to connect these ecosystems, like different consensus mechanisms and so on and so forth. From there, you have to ask ourselves the question, well, okay, now that we can pass messages, we have to understand like what are the different types of application level messages that we're interested in passing to serve different use cases, right? So if we're talking about, let's say, a DEX, then a DEX interacts with assets, and you need to be able to swap one asset for another, right? So if you want users to be able to use assets from outside of the ecosystem where the DEX was built, you have to pass, you know, an asset in one shape or form, represented on the destination chain somehow, such that it can be used in these DEXs, right? So, you know, on top of this interoperability protocol, then you're talking about what is my kind of token transfer format, right? Am I passing, you know, ERC20 equivalent of the token? Am I going to represent it as, you know, NFT and so on and so forth? But that relies on, again, like the lower layer, just basic interoperability protocol, which includes, you know, taking a message, relaying it, finalizing it, and making sure it is safely delivered from one chain to another. Okay, so then you have this application level use cases. And finally, you have to ask yourself, well, how do applications then interact with these protocols underneath it, right? Because applications need if you're a builder on an application, you need a simple API, right, that just sort of connects your ecosystem with a bunch of other, you know, ecosystems, and, you know, you don't want to think about the layers below it, right? And so then there's a third layer of interoperability, which right now it does not exist, I would say, at all. It's an API layer for the application builders that can be exposed that makes it easier for them to connect with 20, 30, 100 different ecosystems, so that they can expose the users of those ecosystems to their application. Right? And right now, I think those layers are, I would say, not defined, and I think a couple projects are doing it by building their own things, but as a layer, we still have a lot of work to do there. So that's on a high level how I would define just interoperability. It's bottom layer, message passing, application level protocols, and it's APIs that make it easier for the applications to be multi-chain enabled.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing these days are potentially just short-term kind of like solutions, right? I think, like I just mentioned, Wrap Bitcoin is one thing that implements a centralized custodian between,
Right.
which has a lot of counterparty risk. And then you have something like IBC that, at least for tenement-based chains, makes it easy to seamlessly transfer everything between each other. So can you share your thoughts about the current stage of IBC, and also what role IBC plays in Axelar? I mean, as you plan to become kind of like this communication interoperability hub built on Cosmos technology, I guess you're also implementing IBC, right?
Yeah, so Axelar is IBC enabled, right? I mean, on a high level, Axelar sort of is not just a single protocol. You can think of it as a kind of collection of protocols, and it's really kind of interoperability network, right? That our goal is to make it easy to scale interoperability, as much as possible, and build also kind of a building blocks that would allow to build both the network layer interoperability protocol, but also these application level interoperability protocols, right? That we talked about. And so Axelar is supporting IBC. We have kind of our protocol that we're rolling out to support other ecosystems like Bitcoin, right? That makes it very easy to connect with Polkadot ecosystem, and Ethereum, and a bunch of other external chains. And so right now, some of the use cases that we're seeing is you can take an asset. If you build somewhere in the Cosmos ecosystem, you can route it through IBC to Axelar, and then Axelar will help you deliver it to some of the other external ecosystems, kind of building this connector in the middle. And so, yeah, I think for that, roles. Again, it seems like right now we are going to be interacting with multiple different protocols, right? And I think it'll be quite interesting to see kind of how this shapes out over the years.
Awesome. And please help me out on that, because I don't know what is the current landscape of other interoperability protocols other than IBC. I know Polkadot, they're working on their XCMP. I don't even know what it's called. I forgot.
Yeah.
But there's some other protocols, right? So is the plan then, once these protocols goes live, to implement all of them and have kind of like you said, this kind of like network of protocols, or how can I imagine that to happen?
Yeah, so I think right now, kind of back to your first question, right? Like, what is the landscape of interoperability protocols? I would say there's sort of three buckets right now that are popular. There is kind of ecosystem-focused interoperability protocols, right? I would say IBC and sort of Polkadot kind of protocols are working quite well within those ecosystems. But to scale them outside, it's a very heavy engineering lift, right? And it's kind of multi-years, because they do assume specifics about the consensus protocols. And so if you have consensus that doesn't even have those specifics, like Ethereum, like Bitcoin, you need some new protocols. Then the second level of interoperability protocols that we're seeing today are kind of application-specific interoperability chains. So I think Thorchain is one example, right? So its stack has been built to make it easier to connect with the different ecosystems, including, I think, Bitcoin. But the whole stack was built around a single use case in mind. And the team, so it's automated market making, right? So how could you swap one asset for the other? And so you saw, over 3 years of development by now, building the stack to support a single use case, which is not ideal. We really want any application to be multi-chain enabled, and as a developer, you shouldn't have to spend 3 years building the connectivity issues, right, just to make your one application, cross-chain enabled. And then I think the most popular one that we're seeing right now in the market are kind of bridges, right? Primarily because they have this property that they're easy to kind of connect from one chain to another, right? You just set up, one account here, one account there. It's also very easy to put just a centralized database and move assets from one chain to another. And so that's why we're seeing most of the bridges today. They're either centralized or federated, where a few validators have been picked by the core protocol developers. And by itself, I think by far, kind of these bridges are one of the biggest risks for the ecosystem, I would say right now, right? Because they're, you're moving billions of dollars of assets from a decentralized ecosystem to another decentralized ecosystem, and you have, sort of centralized custodian for more practical purposes in the middle. So this will be your bank, right? Sort of down the years, and this will be your kind of a point of failure. And yeah, so those are kind of a not ideal as well. And so I think the way that we approached it is that, well, we want to design something that is easy to integrate other ecosystems. You shouldn't have to spend years of engineering work just to connect another ecosystem, and at the same time make it secure and decentralized. Right? So the whole Axelar network was built. You can think of it almost as a also interoperability toolkit, right? Where we have different tools that will be available to the developers, like threshold signatures, like multi-signature accounts, like various kind of read and write oracles, and then you can come in and kind of build interoperability protocol, make it easy to with just a few commands to kind of connect one ecosystem with another, deploy a token if you want, pass other types of kind of application level requests across these ecosystems. And so I think that would really address a lot of the issues that we're seeing today with kind of existing approaches.
So which are the ecosystems that initially are going to be able to connect it through Axelar that we currently have? Is it, for example, possible to get Bitcoin on Cosmos, or what type of ecosystems can we connect?
Yeah, so we've been having actually a lot of ecosystems that are connected already. We have a protocol that works with Bitcoin, so you can move Bitcoin from Cosmos ecosystem to other EVM ecosystems as well. We actually recently open sourced a threshold library that we use behind it. We're actually going to be upgrading, I think, this library to a newer implementation of threshold cryptography that's now available in Bitcoin. So. But besides it, it's other EVM ecosystems that we're targeting, at least right now. So you'll be able to kind of move assets, let's say from a kind of Atom or Terra to Ethereum, right, to Avalanche, to kind of Moonbeam, and a bunch of other EVM chains and back. But again, at the core, the way we designed the protocol is that we made it super simple for anybody to come in and build a new connection, right? And I think we're going to work, pretty hard to onboard other ecosystems along the way as well.
And at Cosmoverse, you said that you will be talking about scaling a blockchain interoperability, and I think that's also the core of what Axelar aims to achieve. Can you maybe expand a little bit on that? I know we touched upon many things here, what that means, but maybe in a very also basic way. How is the world, for example, going to be looking like 5, 10, 20 years from now if we have true scalable interoperability in the blockchain industry?
Yeah, so I think scaling interoperability really comes down to serving, I would say, 3 audiences right now, right? It's platform or blockchain builders, it's application builders, and it's users, right? So as a platform builder today, if you build another network, once you have initial traction, the second thing you ask is, well, how do I get more liquidity, right? Or how do I interact with other ecosystems? So, even within the Cosmos ecosystem, you see a few projects, taking and trying to build their own one-off bridges to, let's say, move assets from Ethereum. Right? But then as a builder of that blockchain or application, now your efforts are split. Right? In one side, you're trying to maximize the value proposition of your application, but then you have some engineering resources that you're starting to spend just to build a bridge, right, to one ecosystem that you want to move assets. So that's not ideal. I think a lot of these blockchain kind of builders themselves, they don't want to have to spend time on building, the connectivity tissue. They just want to focus on building the application themselves. And so this is where we have to do better. And I think this is one of the core value propositions that we're trying to build with the Axelar network is as a builder of an ecosystem, you don't have to spend time building your connectivity issue. You can come in and use some commands and onboard your ecosystem with a bunch of other networks just by typing a few commands right through command line argument, and the connection will be there. So that's one part of it. Second of all, it's going back to the application builders, right? So as an application builder, now I want to be able to interact with these ecosystems in a very easy way, right? So that I can get more liquidity, I can get more distribution of my application, and I can get more users to access my application, right? And that really requires building these, like I said, application level protocols, APIs, and so on and so forth that make it easier for the applications to reach this distribution, right? And finally, I think to truly scale it, really the world that we have to live in is where, as a user, you should be able to take any asset that you have and use it in an application, no matter where it was built. So assuming you trust the asset issuer that build the asset on a blockchain that you trust, and assuming you trust in the application issuer that deploy the application on the best platform for their needs, you should be able to go and use it. Right? And there's interoperability tissue that will connect all of this, but make it very seamless for you as a user, right? So, as an example, if you're interacting with a website, right, or having a video call on the internet right now, our packets are sent from one network to another, right? There's usually 6 or 7 hops that you and I would have to talk through when we're interacting on the internet, let's say through a Zoom call. But we're not seeing any of that, right? It's not that, I'm sending, commands from one hop to another saying, forward the packet from this router, right? Just so we can have this online Zoom call. But there are layers of interoperability protocols that were built over 20 years, right? That make it seamless. And it wasn't like that on day one. On day one, you have to go on a terminal, right? Or in the early days and type those commands to send the packet from one network to another. And it was very painful, and that's what really I think is going to happen over the next 5-10 years, is that we're going to build these connectivity tissues that will make it easier for the users to almost care less about where the application was built, but focus a little bit more on its utility, right, and its distribution and its core value proposition. Again, there's a strong security assumptions that will have to be made along the way, because in the multi-chain world, things becoming sharded more and more, and you have to think harder about security along the way. But I think I think it's a solvable problem.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's so cool how you broke it down from these 3 different angles, because it really makes it clear this is an inevitable future. And I think most of us that are also watching this video now, we're more on the user perspective, right? So I think even from a user perspective, it solves so many problems. And when I hear you speak, it's this is obvious. This is the next the next step. There's no way around it, right? There's not going to be a sudden extinction of all layer ones and all these applications, and just one is going to win and rule them all. I think there's going to be so much that is still coming up. And just to be able to connect them behind the scenes, like you said, when I think also in the white paper, you're drawing analogies to HTTPS or TCP/IP, for example, right? Those are these core protocols running in the background silently that users and most builders probably don't even notice, don't even need to care about. It's just, it just works. It's just there, right? And it gives us full access to the internet. And I think in the same way, IBC and all these protocols, I think you call them the cross-chain transfer protocol and the cross-chain gateway protocol. I think all these kind of things, when they really come to life and really work, also stress tested. And like you said, I think security is a really big thing. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that in a second. That's inevitable. And I think it just resolves so many problems and really unlocks this decentralized world that everybody envisions, right? Other than, say, oh no, there's only this one ecosystem, and but you have to sacrifice many things if you just focus on one ecosystem. So
Yeah, I mean, I think on that, I think at the end of the day, like if we want to reach mass adoption, we have to make it easier to use all of these applications, right? I'll give you an example. I was onboarding, a friend of mine, and I gave him kind of a, some access to like a wallet and like a few tokens within the Cosmos ecosystem, right? And he played with like Osmosis and like, oh, this is like super cool, like execute 100 transactions, right, like in a week, and then it's like, oh, let me go to this other ecosystem. It's like, oh, what the F is going on there? Like, how do I get there, right? Oh, wait, I have to pay $100, to cover my transaction, like on Ethereum. Like, oh, this is like impossible, right? And I think kind of the user experience today for cross-chain is pretty painful. But I think we're gonna, this is again like something I think kind of started the Cosmos ecosystems, this application-specific chains, right, and the future of them. I think we're going to see more and more of that, and sort of inevitable if you want to scale the ecosystem in some sense from a technical perspective. So I think I'm kind of pretty aligned with that view as well.
awesome, yeah, and I agree. I mean, right now, especially in Ethereum, you're pretty much priced out. I think yesterday I made a trade. I think the trade alone cost me $200-300, which is crazy. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Like at this point, it doesn't even make sense to use Ethereum anymore. And
no, and I think new application builders are now, I would be surprised if they're actually seriously considering Ethereum, right? Because if you're just starting an application, and let's say like you're going to ship it 6 months from now or 8 months from now, Ethereum fees are going to be even higher at that point. But also interoperability is going to be becoming more and more accessible, and the tooling is going to be becoming better and better in a lot of these ecosystems, right? A lot of them are EVM compatible. So I think there's not a lot of, I would say, kind of a justifiable objections besides the kind of community efforts to go and build on the Ethereum ecosystem over the coming years. I think it's going to be as an application builder, at the end of the day, like, you have to make the best choices for your application if you want to really have mass distribution and mass impact on your user base. And if you're saying, my user is going to pay $200 for a transaction fee to use my application, then like, okay, then you're working for a small club for the most part.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's now the time for other ecosystems to really show and basically prove what they've been preaching for many years. But I think at Cosmos, it has been proven for a couple of years now. I see other mainnets that just recently went live. They still have like struggles to really prove their technology under real world circumstances. But anyway, let's talk before we get into some community questions briefly about security. You already briefly touched upon it, that this is one of the most important things that you guys also need to focus on, because my assumption is that when you try to bridge ecosystems that are usually not compatible to each other, there's a strong reason for it, right? And one could be, for example, the consensus algorithms function in a completely different way, right?
Right.
Right now, you still have to have hardware devices, same on Bitcoin, right, with proof of work. Then you have proof of stake, and you have many variations of it. So how much does that play a role? And maybe you can talk about some other risk factors when you try to bridge ecosystems or interoperate ecosystems.
Yeah. So first of all, again, whenever we're talking about security, right, it's a very overused kind of term, but it could mean a lot of things, right? Security is a combination of assumptions that you make along the way, and every time you build in anything, including interoperability protocol, your assumption stack is pretty deep. You assuming something about cryptography, okay, always, that like certain signatures are not broken, hash functions don't have collisions, and so on and so forth. You're assuming something about, economic security of those protocols, right? Other, relayers incentivized, right? Other validator sets, incentivized to behave the correct way. Other, punishments for misbehavior on the protocol, and so on and so forth, right? And then, at the same time, you also trust in a lot in the implementations as well, right? Just because an implementation is open source of something does not mean it's a secure protocol, right? Like implementations are complicated, right? They usually have thousands of lines of code, depending on what protocol you're using, like you are interacting with smart contracts. And so security also is a function of the complexity of the implementation, right? Like, as naively you can think of it, like how many lines of code do I need to write to make this protocol work? And if the number of lines of code is in tens of thousands, no matter how kind of trust minimizing your protocol is, you're going to be assuming that tens of lines of thousands of code don't have bugs, which is not true, right? Like everything is going to have bugs. So from that perspective, I think security is a sort of very deep and complicated topic, right? And I think what has to happen, no matter what, is I strongly believe in simplicity. Okay, because if you have simple protocols that maybe make slightly stronger assumptions on the real world, but they're at the same time are easy to build and easy to test and easy to scale, I think you're going to end up at the end of the day with potentially more secure implementations, right? So, and I think that's something we strongly think through as we're building like the Axelars to make it as simple as possible for the users to interact with it and for everybody else. But I think final point I'll just mention about the security. A lot of the networks that you see today actually trust pretty much the similar validator sets. So whenever you're talking about interoperability or something like that, or just trust in different networks, okay, there's maybe like a token that you trust in and you trust in the implementation, but from a kind of consensus level, decentralized trust, they have very, very similar trust assumptions because they all rely on the same validator sets that, like Figment, Chorus, and a bunch of other folks that have, large percents of the stakes in those networks. So at least on the network level, where I think people tend to focus when they talk about security, the security is very similar in a lot of these ecosystems. And I think then you have to start thinking about, again, like how many lines of code did I write for my protocol? What other economic assumptions are made along, and so on and so forth. And so I strongly believe in just security by decentralization. I think at the end of the day, kind of the bigger the validator sets are, the more decentralized you can make the protocol, the more open you can make it so for other people to join and lower the barrier of entry to your protocol. I think more participants you're going to have and more security you're going to have along the way. Plus simplicity. I think simplicity is a very big aspect that should not be undervalued whenever you talk about security.
Yeah, I agree. Simplicity is super important. And so, where do you guys currently stand? I think you are right now in the incentivized testnet phase. Do you have a rough kind of like, I don't know, timeline of the next 3, 4, 5 months? What are some of the milestones that you aim to achieve? And yeah, some things that you already have achieved and done with Axelar.
Yeah, so to date we have an incentivized testnet. We have kind of close to 1,000 participants on the network right now that are playing it. I think we have 50 validators, which are running the protocol, giving us feedback, and we're iterating, fixing issues and so on and so forth. Kind of the goal over the next few months is to complete like a series of audits that we started on some of the initial functionalities that we're trying to roll out with. So we have an audit on the smart contracts. We had audit on some of the crypto aspects. It is at the end of the day kind of again like a whole stack that you have to go through and iterate and audit. So we're in process of that right now, and our target right now is early next year is to launch with some initial connections and some initial flows and functionalities, and continue building from there. I think as we talked about, I think interoperability is sort of not a specific destination, but it's a roadmap of things you have to build along the way to really get it to this user experience that we're all after. And we'll still have kind of a very deep roadmap to execute on.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we can jump into some community questions. I made a tweet yesterday, actually. Got a lot of attention. So you guys are in high demand these days. Almost 10,000 impressions. Almost 100 people liked it. And many, many questions. Obviously, also a lot of questions around things that I will ask in a second. But first, we can maybe start with the question from El Jefe, who is asking, maybe you can point out similarities and differences from what Thorchain is building and whether Axelar renders Thorchain useless.
Interesting question. So I think Thorchain, as I mentioned earlier, I think the whole stack was designed with the simple use case in mind, is to simplify, automated market making across chains, and yeah. So I think, sorry, the whole network was built with that objective in mind, and I think what we're trying to do with Axelar is build something which is more universal and more kind of composable and buildable, so that you can build various interoperability protocols and really unlock multiple applications to be cross-chain enabled, not just automated market maker that's built on the Thorchain itself, but we really want applications to be built kind of anywhere, right, in the ecosystem. Build on on Cosmos, on Avalanche, on Ethereum, whatever you want. Like, you as an application builder should make a choice where you want to build, and we just want to make you cross-chain enabled, and we'll give you the APIs and tools and kind of SDKs down the line that will make that easier for you, which is not an objective of Thorchain.
Okay. Next question: will Axelar implement also the gravity bridge?
Yeah, so we have kind of our own protocol that we've been working with, which it does have some similarities with Gravity Bridge in some sense. But the way we kind of architected it's a lot more composable, I would say, right? So again, Axelar by itself is not kind of a single bridge. It's a network, right? And its network is to connect an ecosystem with and other ecosystems in a seamless way. And so the whole stack was designed to kind of optimize for it. I think if you look at various individual building blocks that we're seeing, you'll definitely see some similarities with a lot of other technologies, including like the Gravity Bridge. But on its own, it's a network, right? It's not a single bridge or a protocol.
Awesome. CryptoChris is asking, how does Axelar fit into the larger Cosmos ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think again, based on kind of what we said, is early days, for instance, you'll be able to transfer assets from Cosmos ecosystem to other ecosystems which are not kind of communicating with the Cosmos chains right now, right? So I think that's if you're building, let's say, an asset. I think UST is a good example. So it was an asset built within the Cosmos ecosystem, but it's a valuable asset that a lot of other ecosystems want to see, right? Like it's a stable coin. So we'll make it very easy for it to be kind of accessible in those ecosystems, and then really make kind of Cosmos connect easier with other ecosystems that are speaking different consensus protocols right now, like we said, including proof of work chains.
So basically, it's the Google Translate of Cosmos to the outside.
Yeah.
Chaos Dragon is asking, and well, he just asked when Doge, but I guess this could also mean whether you could potentially offload or kind of like connect Dogecoin to the Cosmos network and maybe launch, I don't know, bring it over. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, definitely possible, right? Like like I said, we've had Bitcoin on the test network for some number of months now. Dogecoin is, for the most part, is a fork of it, so it follows the same implementation. Yeah, and I don't think it will be very hard. That being said, I think you won't necessarily get it in the same level of security as you were, when you're connecting like Bitcoin, because Dogecoin scripts are actually even less powerful, and they haven't kept up with upgrades and so on and so forth. So on Bitcoin right now, like they just upgraded to Schnorr signatures, which we're gonna look closely into, because it gives you much more efficient protocols. I don't think Dogecoin is there yet, but you can build, you can take some of the stuff we have, for Bitcoin, or maybe at some point we will do, and connect the Dogecoin as well. If we see a lot of demand for it, I think, and I know some Cosmos folks, including like Sunny, are pretty excited about it. So maybe we'll do it.
Meme coins are hot, Sergey. Meme coins are hot. That's why we need them. And it's funny when Elon made this tweet, Elon Musk, about that he remember this when he said like he had a call with the Dogecoin developers or Dogecoin core developers, and then somebody made a tweet like those are the Dogecoin developers, and then just Elon at Saturday Night Live and all these different characters, with Mario Kart, like because I think there's not too much going on actually, but anyway,
it's a one-way bridge, right? Like from Dogecoin, like you move it somewhere else, and like for all practical purposes, you may just burn it on that chain, and then just move it to Cosmos, and like assuming people put the same value into it, like let's call that a Dogecoin because we burned it from the source chain.
One question I got a lot here actually from many people is regarding Algorand. Obviously, since you're one of the earliest or founding members of Algorand, is it possible for Algorand to implement IBC and to kind of like also become compatible with the Cosmos ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think it would be technically pretty hard, right? Because kind of a IBC has certain semantics that you have to satisfy at the consensus layer, at the messaging layer. I mean, currently Algorand doesn't have those. So while in principle you can do anything, right? It would be kind of probably a multi-year or at least like a year of engineering on a solid team to kind of build it and integrate it there. I think kind of going back to it though, I think IBC on itself also has multiple layers, right? There's like IBC packet semantics, which kind of anybody can use, and you can just say, okay, my packet has the same format as IBC because I want to like be compatible on the message passing. In terms of just the trust assumptions, like you can then make your own interoperability protocol along the way, right? Either going through, kind of an Axelar stack or whatever else you want to satisfy those IBC semantics. But for light client verifications and things like that, I think that's it would be a pretty heavy engineering work.
Okay. Last question. The cosmonauts would kill me if I don't ask you that. Whether there's an airdrop. I mean, cosmonauts have been really, really spoiled with airdrops, so everybody's kind of like, you have to ask him. I'm sure there's an airdrop. So what can you tell us about airdrops or any sort of like early incentives for early participants in Axelar?
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment, specifically on airdrops. I think we'll have to see for announcements from the foundation. But we are, inviting all folks to kind of come in and help us build a network. So we have an incentivized test network where people can kind of come in, sign up. We have various exercises that they can perform on the network to help us test it, to help us create more documentations, videos around it. And I think we're going to be announcing a couple other community programs which will, make it more interesting to play with the network and help us build the growth. And I think sort of go from there.
Cool. All right. So thanks for being here today. Really appreciate your time. And we're almost at an hour. Time went by really fast. I'll leave all the channels down below under this video so people can also join the community, become part, ask follow-up questions if there are any. And we'll hopefully see you soon at some point. Latest next year at the Cosmos conference, part 2. So thanks again for being here today.
Awesome. Great to be here. Great conversation.